I'm Daniel Alameda here with Malik Wright from TWSN. We're going to talk about why Joe Burrow is our favorite to win the 2022 NFL MVP award. Right now, he has the sixth highest odds at plus 1,200. We think he should be a lot higher than that. And Malik, break it down for me a little bit. Why is Joe Burrow your favorite to win MVP?
Well, it all starts with the mental makeup at the quarterback position. I think a guy like Joe Burrow never gets too high, never gets too low. He always stays even keeled. And I think that's something that's super important to have at the quarterback position because, you know, your teammates, the coaching staff, they look for you to be the leader on the field. They look for you to calm the storm. And if there's one guy that I think could put a Super Bowl loss behind them, it's definitely Joe Burrow. I think people don't realize what the Bengals accomplished behind a lackluster offensive line. I hate to be so blunt about it, but the offensive line was absolutely atrocious last year. Yet still, they made it to the Super Bowl. Joe Burrow, he had the most deep passes amongst quarterbacks in the National Football League by a large margin too last season. And you figure this is going to be the best offensive line he's ever had to play with, right? The Bengals revamped the offensive line. They realized they had a weakness. They got sacked 7 times in the Super Bowl, and they went out there and they addressed the weakness, right? They signed a guy like Alex Kappa, who was a starting right guard for the Bucs, and he was a starting right guard for the Bucs during their Super Bowl season. They went out there. They picked up a guy like Ted Karras, who was a 2-time Super Bowl champion, has been Tom Brady's offensive line for a couple of years over in New England, had a stint in Miami, but he's been consistent. Then they got the big behemoth, right? The big mauler over at right tackle. The Dallas Cowboys couldn't afford to keep him. But one man's, I don't want to even say trash because that's not what the Cowboys even viewed it as. I would say one man's, player that they had. I don't know what the right terminology.
Recycling bin.
Right, recycling bin is someone else's absolute treasure. So for the Bengals to land a guy like Lyle Collins on the offensive line, you book him in with the left tackle they already have in place in Jonah Williams, and they're expecting Jackson Carman, the left guard, to take the next leap. I think the Bengals are on the brink of something very, very special. This is the best offensive line that they have had since 2016.
Yeah, and something else that we've talked about a lot. No one has an answer for Jamar Chase. No one has an answer for T. Higgins. No one else has an answer for Tyler Boyd, right? And it feels like, the mainstream media is sleeping on this Bengals team as a whole. And we're going to talk about, why the supporting cast can help him win MVP. Because you got the same supporting cast they had last year. You give me Jamar Chase another year. And I'll let you get into Joe Mixon in a bit. But I look at this quarterback, Joe Burrow, who had the 6th most passing yards last year. I think he had the 8th most passing touchdowns, and he didn't play that final game. He rested the final game, still put up those stats. So you give him another year in the system. And something else, Malik, this is his first real offseason as an NFL quarterback, right? Rookie year, all the drama. It's a new franchise. What do I do? Second year, rehabbing from the injury. No one even expected him to be ready week 1. And then this is his first real offseason as an NFL quarterback. So what do you think about the weapons and specifically Joe Mixon too? How is that going to help him, get to the MVP?
I mean, I think everyone's talking about the additions that other teams have made this offseason, like the Bills or like the Ravens, so on and so forth. The Bengals didn't really have to go out there and make that many acquisitions. Why? Because they already had the team in place. And this is a young crop of receivers that still hasn't reached their potential. Now, a guy like Tyler Boyd's been in the league for quite some time. But I feel like something that's not being talked about enough is you still have to account for the 3-headed monster at wide receiver. And when you think you have an answer for that, you had mentioned Joe Mixon. Yes, Joe Mixon. So as soon as you think you have an answer for the wide receiving core of the Bengals flip the question because they changed the question because then they're able to hand it off to their workhorse, right? A guy like Joe Mixon, who's very capable of rushing for in the high 180s for you, as needed, right? I think Joe Mixon is bound to have his best NFL season, barring he stays healthy. This is the best offensive line he's rushed behind, and yet still he's compiled a couple of 1,000-yard receivers. I'm sorry, a couple 1,000-yard seasons with the Bengals, and I think that's something that's not being slept on, not being talked about enough. I feel like it's actually being slept on. I think people just think, oh, it's going to be the same old Bengals come out the gates kind of slow, and I think now what you're going to see is you're going to see less people crowd in the box, more people showing respect to Joe Mixon and showing more respect to those wide receivers out there covering them, right? And, a guy, Daniel, that nobody is talking about either, Hayden Hurst. No
Yeah.
one's talking about Hayden Hurst, and I know people don't want to hear it. People have kind of gone at me a little bit on Twitter for being kind of bullish on this, but I think Hayden Hurst is in for a record season. I really do. I think the Bengals, unbeknownst to them, probably didn't realize, but they got a huge upgrade at the tight
Yeah.
end position. I think Hayden Hurst is miles better than CJ Uzama. And again, I'm not going to be the guy that's going to sit up here and just say, trust me. I think you're going to see it from the opening game. The guy Hayden Hurst is a true receiving threat down the field, and just adding that dimension to the Bengals offense, right? We always say tight end is a luxury position. And I think we're going to see that in the Bengals offense. You're going to have teams really committed to stopping Jamar Chase, who can burn you for 200 yards each game if you leave him on an island. You got T. Higgins, who can beat you deep down the field. You got Tyler Boyd, who can absolutely obliterate your slot corner in the slot. You got Joe Mixon, who can take the ball out the backfield and also catch the ball out the backfield. And then you got a guy like Hayden Hurst, who can truly be that deep threat receiver. And here's the one thing about football: you can't cover them all. You have to pick your poison. You have to make a choice. I'm betting Hayden Hurst has a record season.
Yeah, and kind of the final point, I want to make about this is I hear a lot of people, and I know you hear this too. People are saying that this team's gonna have a Super Bowl hangover, that they're gonna be the next team that doesn't make the playoffs, or their quarterback's gonna have that slump. I just think that's a baseless claim, because when you look at the actual facts, like Malik laid out, the offensive line, the biggest weakness, a bottom 10 offensive line, they improved it with 3 new starters. You look at their weapons. It's not like they have some bums. They have arguably the best receiving core in the entire NFL. So for me to hear, a lot of, oh, they're going to regress like the Panthers did after their Super Bowl, or they're going to regress like the 49ers did. Hold on. This team wasn't even supposed to be there last year. So how does that relate to Joe Burrow? He's going to have a career year. He's going to have the best year of his career because of this new offseason he has. And he's got the entire supporting cast. So for me, to be honest, I don't see any fault in building Joe Burrow's case to be the MVP this year.
Well, I agree with you, Daniel. I think the one thing people are missing on this is I don't think Joe Burrow, and this was at least told to me, I don't think Joe Burrow was too proud of this performance he had throughout the playoffs. He certainly believed he could have played better, especially in that Kansas City Chiefs game early on, and so on and so forth. And I think that if you know one thing about Joe Burrow, dating all the way back to his days at Ohio State, when the chips are down, right, and the deck is stacked against him, the guy always seems to deliver. He always seems to play to the best of his ability. We saw with LSU after his first year at LSU, where he didn't look that great. I think he threw 16 touchdown passes, 5 interceptions. Came back that next year and they threw 60 touchdown passes, right, and had an absolute career year, and won the Heisman, and moved his draft stock all the way up from a mid-round pick all the way to the first overall pick. And I think that this is a classic case of people sleeping on Joe Burrow. And I think the league is. I think a lot of fans around the league, a lot of people in the media around the league are almost thinking that the Bengals will, their season was a fluke, and I just don't know how you could say that was a fluke. But I trust and believe. I believe the Bengals, they see all that kind of stuff. I think Joe Burrow, obviously, he hears all the noise that people are chattering and things. And guess what? For a team that young, that experienced that much success, understand, like Joe Burrow said, he did an interview the other day on the Nelk Boys. Not the Nelk Boys, on the Full Sin podcast, and he said, we didn't know how to win. We never been there before, so we didn't know what it took to get there. Now we realized, okay, wow, we actually can get there. We only got better as a football team. And I think that's going to serve to their advantage. And I think the Bengals are going to shock a lot of people, because I think what you're going to see is a more mature team. They were the least penalized team in football last year too. People don't talk about that. You're going to see a very mature team, but also a team that has been there before. How people say act like you've been there before. Like they say, when you score a touchdown, don't go crazy in the end zone. You're going to see a team that's going to be disciplined and realizes how special of a core that they have, because all things considered, their core is intact. T. Higgins is back. Tyler Boyd is back. Jamar Chase is back. Joe Burrow is back. Joe Mixon is back. And Hayden Hurst, they upgraded the tight end position. I think this Bengals football team is back. I think the Bengals run not only the AFC North, but I think the Bengals run the AFC.
Yeah, and looking at him as an MVP, he's got the mental makeup to do it. And as you talked about, there is no flaw in their situation on offense. And for me, looking into it's obviously projection, but this team's going to be different this year. They're not going to be an 8-win team. They're not going to revert back to their old ways. And, we were in that stadium, for their first playoff game. There's a different aura around the city right now. And I think it's because of Joe Burrow. And for people expecting him to have a slump, to regress, that's not happening. And that's that's why he's the favorite to win the MVP this year.
Absolutely.
Welcome everyone to the TWSN Betting Patreon. If you like making a little money and want an entire team do the research for you daily, come join us here. We have 5 different packages: rookie, starter, veteran, Hall of Fame, and GOAT, with each one increasing in different types of betting analysis for you. Just know if you subscribe to any one of these tiers on the TWSN Betting Patreon, you're getting a team that is putting hours and hours daily into the best bets, into the futures bets, into any question that you have. So there's only one thing left to do. Join the TWSN Betting Patreon, as there's only one way to bet the right way.
Get up, let me begin.